Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, here with Tanner Jones. As you can see from the show notes, the show title, I've been looking forward to this. And even though he is in state, we are sheltered in place. So we're doing this by phone. First, thanks to sponsors, Top Panini Upper Deck, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike's Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, and Huggins and Scott Auctions. So Tanner, welcome to the show. This is our opportunity to kind of get acquainted, and for me and the listeners to kind of hear some of your hobby origin story. I know you wrote an excellent book that I read. It was a real page turner. I couldn't put it down, and it was of a size that I could knock it out in a day or two and just vicariously live that with you. But even though I'm highly recommending the book, I don't think every single person is necessarily going to read it. So tell us about your hobby journey. And again, thanks for being here.
Well, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. I've been listening to your podcast as well, and just really, really enjoyed it. So, my journey has begun a lot like people my age. I'm about to be 40 in about a month, and so that means I grew up in the 80s and 90s, of course. And so a lot of people my age, what we did is we got into it in the 80s. Loved 89 Tops to death, 91 Donruss, and just had dreams about that stuff. And around the time of the lockout, or the time from mid 90s, we got to be teenagers, and school, church, all that stuff got in the way of the hobby, especially because of the lockout, probably, and that sort of thing. And so we moved away from it. Ended up becoming an adult, thankfully, and had a family, and started business and everything, and came back to the hobby and go, it's wildly different now than what it was when I was a kid. So I'm just loving it.
What there's a lot of guys your age that have popped back in. I think you popped in earlier than a lot of people have come back in the last 5 years or so. And because there's been a lot of enthusiasm and dynamism in the industry. But when did you jump back in with both feet? Was it out of college, or where were you? I want to say when you start jumping in and realizing, hey, I've got some money, I've got some interest. The cards are arguably more interesting now.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. I would say probably maybe 2005, 2006. So I was about 25, 26 years old, and this is what I seem to recall. This is my memory. I've got a terrible memory, by the way, so I'm trying my hardest here. But there was a hurricane that came through here in the Houston area back in 2005, I believe it was. And electricity was knocked out and that sort of thing. I started thinking, I was like, I wonder about those baseball cards I had in my closet here. So I had my little Jose Canseco baseball card collection as a kid. And so I pulled them out and I go, oh man, this is just the coolest thing ever. And so that's kind of what brought me back, I think. And my parents actually gave me a box of baseball cards as a gift of 2006 Upper Deck Future Stars, I believe, for Christmas or my birthday. And I thought, that's kind of neat. So it was kind of like, it was just like an ignition that kept trying to turn, and finally got me there, and just hadn't looked back.
What great parents!
I
did get cards from my dad. From my grandparents passed me down my dad's childhood collection, so that was cool. And my dad bought me my first pack for a penny. But to be in your 20s and have your parents buy you a box of cards, how cool is that?
It really is neat. They lived they were living in California at that time. And so they just sent it through mail, and I go, oh man, what is this? So I open them up, and you take out the cards and you move them in the light, and they actually shine and reflect like some rainbow. You go, wow, this is wildly different from 88 Donruss. Like, what's going on here?
Well, the late 80s, early 90s cards, they weren't unattractive, but one of the words that you used in your book was, you used the A word, addiction. And one of the ways they combat addiction sometimes is I think it's called aversion therapy. And so basically they make you just smoke cigarettes until you get sick. You have to smoke, 10 cigarettes an hour for 24 hours. And then you hate the sight of a cigarette. That's kind of what happened to cards in the late 80s and early 90s, is that even though those cards are really pretty attractive, the overproduction that you just saw them everywhere, it totally defeated any notion that these are scarce as we look back. And then, like I said, when you get back into the late 90s, there still were a bunch of cards, but the tougher ones that you've specialized in and really developed a real expertise on, some of these rare inserts. And then, by the 2000s with all the serial numbering stuff, again, cards all of a sudden were scarce. You could tell this one I haven't seen very much. Whereas, your Jose Canseco cards, if you wanted, I don't know how many, did you go by quantity or were you quality? Because, you could have had a stack as high as you wanted to have of 88 tops or 89 tops Cansecos.
Oh yeah, you could easily have,
1,000.
literally thousands of them.
Yeah.
And so the way that I did it is I wanted basically one of every single type. And, which by the way, I still pick up Conseco cards that are like super special to me. I've got a couple on my desk. I'll show you a little later as well. But yeah, but back then when I was a super collector of his, I wanted one of every single type.
All the way. I mean, it was all the way from what, 83, I guess would be his first pre-rookie card, all the way up to the present? Or did you do mainly his playing career?
Yeah, it was one of everything all the way. So, and the thing was, it was kind of strange for collecting for me, anyways. Is I got to the point where I had almost everything, and I was literally just waiting for the checklist to drop of the newer things and see, okay, what cards are going to come out this month, so I can set my sights on those. And it was a really kind of a little bit of a strange way of collecting when you're literally just looking for the cards that haven't been produced yet.
When you were picking up these Consecos, I'm kind of a numbers guy. What percentage of them of the cards do you think you got from personal relationships? People that knew you, looking out for you, as opposed to eBay, where you were scraping and look through, or as opposed to ComC or the Beckett Marketplace or some of these nicer auctions out there. I mean, where was your primary source and your secondary source?
It's hard to really kind of quantify how many came from where, because I was always heavily on ComC. I was always heavily on Beckett. I was always, excuse me, I was always heavily on eBay, of course. But the one thing that was probably most helpful for me, which is just wild, I still can't believe this stuff happened, is on Facebook. Are you familiar with Facebook groups, by the way?
A little bit, but I'm not really a Facebook guy at this point. But yeah, no, the groups are powerful.
Okay, so the Facebook groups were a big thing for me because it kind of took the online baseball card forums to the next level, where it was almost instantaneous. Everybody's on Facebook, so everybody was showing instantly what they got from a pack from Walmart or something in their car. They take a picture. Hey guys, take a look at this. And so if it was a rare Conseco, I would sometimes have 7, 8, 9, 10 people tagging me. And so a lot of these rare cards that Conseco had never even made it to eBay, so which is really just a super special thing for me to be able to see that people really, knew about me and looked out for me.
Again, just the math part of it. I'm just wondering, how many of those were people just sent it to you, or as opposed to trade, as opposed to say, hey, I want $100 for this or whatever. What was the transaction like? Because it sounds like there was a lot of camaraderie, but it's still, some of the cards are pretty valuable. So what was the normal way when somebody got this card, they thought Tanner would really love this?
Yeah, so the vast majority I purchased from them, and because it wasn't somebody necessarily that would pull a card that was Conseco and say, oh man, I think Tanner would love this. It was them saying, hey, everybody take a look, and then 10 other people saying, hey, Tanner would love this. And so I would always want to be fair. I've realized one thing is, in life, you're only given one name, so you don't want to
get a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be as good as you can to people. So, it cost me quite a bit, but I think it helped me in the long run.
Did you have to set the price, or did you look them up, or did you agree, or did they say, hey, I'll sell to you for this, and you said, no, that's too much? Or, was it always pretty amicable? I mean, they probably would recognize that you're probably the expert.
Yeah, and a lot of times when that was kind of the problem, is they knew that this quote unquote addiction was pretty bad. So if there's a one of one that I really was salivating over, I did not have a good poker face. if there's a bat barrel, oh man, I love that. That's the coolest thing ever. How much do you want for it? And then they give me a price, and okay, you got me.
Yeah, I try to be anonymous on ComC, but I enjoy that format. The problem is the seller on ComC has to define the price and whether or not they're willing to accept offers. And I know now, I realize that whenever I put up a rare Conseco and it was gone in 30 seconds, there's a certain person that well, let's just put it this way. I'm thinking it went to a good home. But do you still have all your Conseco stuff? Have you kind of are you out and now back in, or what's your posture with your Conseco super collecting?
So this has probably been the most fun I've ever had in this hobby. So I started off, obviously, probably at this point, 6, 7, 8 years ago as a super collector. I started getting everything, and then I ended up selling off a lot of stuff. I felt like I didn't really have any other place to go with this collection here. So I sold off everything. I was actually in the middle of negotiations with buying out another massive Conseco collection. I prayed about that. I just didn't feel right about it. I didn't feel like God wanted me to do this, to make this purchase. And so right after that, I was thinking, well, if I'm not getting this, what am I doing here? So I ended up selling virtually everything. And then I go, well, wait a second here. I'm actually not doing too bad selling this stuff. And I really love these cards still. I just love them. So I ended up spending the past couple of years getting back the ones I love. And, a couple of them I think you'll probably have some interest in. Like I said, I'll show you a little later. But yeah, I just love these cards. So I still have a good amount of them, but mainly just my favorites.
One of the, when I was contemplating doing a podcast, and I've certainly not regretted, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm glad we're finally talking, but I made a conscious choice to make it an audio podcast in order to kind of keep it simpler, and I knew I could crank them out, and I'm not a stranger to deadlines, so doing a daily podcast was not that daunting to me. But a video podcast, there's so much more you can do, and so I know I'm giving up the ability, although there's probably some social media supplementation I will eventually do to bring in some of the images. But so many of the images of what you and I could look at on screen, or through whatever, remotely look at it, there's so many subtle differences that one card, especially when you're getting into the super collecting, and and I'm pretty meticulous too. I mean, if I show my wife, who's not a collector, that here's two cards from at arm's length, they look exactly the same, but one is red and one is purple, and the purple one is easier than the red one. And if you don't have a really good monitor or a high res photo or scan or a good camera, you can't even tell. And so, or you got to flip it over the back to say, oh, this is the one that's this serial number.
Yeah. So what I try to do is I try to be very active in showing off the beauty of a lot of these cards to people online. And so what that means for me on Twitter, for example, is every few days I'll take just any Conseco off of in my collection. I'll get my phone out and I'll do a little 3 or 4 second video clip of me just rocking it back and forth in the light for a couple reasons. It doesn't have to be an expensive card. It can be just anything that's pretty, really just to educate people to see what they look like in hand, because there's definitely a difference between having a really pretty card in hand versus one that's scanned online or something. You just can't really get the whole feel for it.
We're out of time because we're trying to stay within 15 minutes, but finish that thought. So you're basically having a 4-second kind of a rotational video that you're putting up on Twitter?
Yep, or I do it all the time too.
Putting it everywhere. And are you narrating it as you go, or are you just kind of making it? Is it just an image and video centric?
Yeah, so all I'll do is I'll put a line of text saying what it is, and I'll show you an example. It's not going to show up well on webcam here. This is a 2018 Bowman's Best Atomic Refractor. On the phone with a flash, it looks phenomenal, and it's just a looping 3 or 4 second video, and that's it.
Without verbiage. I mean, you're saying what it is, or you're just.
Yeah, there's no audio whatsoever. It's literally just me doing this. All you see is in the camera is this, and that's it.
And so you have followers that'll forward that on and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that will say, "Oh man, thanks for showing me this. I want to take a look and get my own copy." Which has been fantastic. That's what I'm looking for. I want people to really understand the beauty of these cards.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time, but Tanner, let's come back and do another episode because I think you've got a lot more to say. But you're clearly, which I think I was back in the day, and you are now. You're an influencer, in this industry, and I thank you for your hard work and dedication and enthusiasm and intensity to care enough to write a book and to be really active and to share your knowledge and be an all around good guy. So thanks, listeners. Thanks, Tanner. Be back again tomorrow with another episode.